Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Lots of big stories. Aurora, Colorado, going on out there. Madison, Wisconsin, and so forth. But before we get to those, Loudoun County school system seems to be under the iron fist of the radical left. Seems to be a petri dish in so much that takes place in this country. And it would appear the NAACP, at least the branch that's involved in Loudoun County, Virginia, has a lot of time on its hands. Has a lot of time on its hands over there at the NAACP. I want you to listen to this report from NBC4 Washington, the local NBC affiliate, obviously. Let's take a listen to this, and then I want your thoughts about it. Cut 16, go.
Some families and students at a Loudoun County high school are outraged. The president of the Loudoun County NAACP says students are forced to pass around cotton during an advanced history class.
Yeah, she says the offensive lesson happened last week at Riverside High School in Lansdowne. Amy Cho has the story you'll see only on News 4.
Controversy at Riverside High School after some students were forced to touch cotton during a history lesson on slavery, according to Pastor Michelle Thomas. She's president of the Loudoun County NAACP and says she received a complaint from a black student in the class.
Black students were extremely embarrassed and humiliated. In some sections of the class, we had students that were actually laughing and making jokes.
Thomas says she hopes teachers understand the hurtful connotations of cotton to students of color.
The fact that teachers have cotton on hand to be used as demonstration, that is problematic, especially when they're teaching advanced classes.
News 4 obtained a letter sent by the school's principal to parents in which he acknowledged the lesson had brought up some uncomfortable feelings in students. The principal also wrote that teachers, administrators, and counselors would be working together to support students who were involved.
The letter also said, "We take matters that involve our students' safety both physically and emotionally seriously, and LCPS is dedicated to creating a safe and inclusive learning environment for all students."
And Loudoun County Schools just sent News 4 a statement moments ago saying the lesson was part of a discussion around the invention of the cotton gin and enslavement. The school system said it must and will do better to achieve a safe and inclusive learning environment for students. LCPS also said it'll work on better guidance for teachers when lessons could potentially be associated with trauma. And the school system promised to review policies with staff around giving parents advance notice when the sensitive topics will be discussed in class.
Is this a joke? Is this a joke? Cotton was the main agricultural product, particularly the South. They sold it heavily overseas to the British and the French, and then we had the Civil War, and the cotton gin had an enormous impact on the growth of the use of cotton and the economy in the South. Is there something going on now? I don't understand. Do people use Q-tips? Do they have cotton balls? I mean, do you have cotton clothing? So you're passing cotton around as an example of what was produced and what took place? And that's offensive? that the president of the NAACP got a complaint from an African-American student about having to see or touch cotton? Do I understand this story correctly, Mr. Producer? And that the Loudoun County school system is going to do a better job and counselors are available for anybody who's offended. Did I hear that too? Now, what the hell is this? If you want to teach American history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you want to teach slavery, how do you avoid cotton and the cotton gin? I'm quite serious, and its impact on the South. Actually, its impact on the American Revolution, as a matter of fact. So it was racially insensitive to pass around cotton? Is this serious? And did you hear how serious the report was? The fact that NBC4 Washington found this to be an imperative news story is crazy. So that tells me the local NAACP in Loudoun County doesn't have enough to do. And so this apparently rises to the top of the list. Cotton being handed out or being shown in a classroom teaching history. And as the school district did say, the impact of the cotton gin and cotton on the South, that is highly relative. In fact, many slaves were brutalized picking cotton in the South. So this is nuts, absolutely nuts. It's an amazing thing. You know, DeSantis was under attack in Florida because he rejected this CRT crap and the wokeism crap and all the rest. Said, no, you teach history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when you're talking about cotton, and cotton was used in the South, how slaves were picking it and brutalized picking it, that's the bad and the ugly right there of American history. No. You can't pass cotton around in the classroom because that's offensive. Passing cotton around in the classroom is offensive, says the pastor, president of the NAACP of Loudoun County. It was a history lesson on slavery and the invention of the cotton gin. Well, it's kind of hard to have a history lesson on slavery and the invention of cotton gin without cotton. And it must be so horrible to actually show cotton and pass it around in the classroom. It must be so damn offensive. Why? Why? It sounds to me like the teacher in the lesson plan was showing some of the ugly underbelly of what had taken place during this period in American history. That's American history. That's American history. Loudoun County school system ought not apologize. You don't need counselors. You need a backbone to stand up against this idiocy dressed up as racism. That's history. That's history. The product is cotton. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. This is Mark Levin wishing you a happy new year. Now back to the best of me. The NAACP of Loudoun County should be celebrating what this teacher did, what took place in this classroom. I wonder if the president of the NAACP actually understands the significance of cotton during the slave period. Because honestly, she sounds like an idiot to me. Here's ThoughtCompany.com. It's hardly a right-wing site. The cotton gin made the cotton industry in the South explode. Before its invention, separating cotton fibers from its seeds was a labor-intensive and unprofitable venture. After Eli Whitney unveiled his cotton gin, processing cotton became much easier, resulting in greater availability and cheaper cloth. However, the invention also had the byproduct of increasing the number of enslaved people needed to pick the cotton, and thereby strengthening the arguments for continuing enslavement. Cotton as a cash crop became so important that it was known as King Cotton and affected the politics up until the Civil War. Whitney's cotton gin revolutionized an essential step in cotton processing. The resulting increase in cotton production dovetailed with other Industrial Revolution inventions, namely the steamboat, and it goes on. Much of the South's suddenly increased quantity of ready-to-weave cotton was exported to the North. Much of it was destined to feed the New England textile mills. When he died in 1825, Whitney had never realized the invention for which he is best known today had actually contributed to the growth of the enslavement of black people to the degree it did, I should say, in the Civil War. While his cotton gin had reduced the number of workers needed to remove the seeds from the fiber, it actually increased the number of enslaved people the plantation owners needed to plant, cultivate, and harvest the cotton. Thanks largely to cotton gin, growing cotton became so profitable that plantation owners constantly needed more land and labor of enslaved people to meet the increased demand for the fiber. From 1790 to 1860, the number of U.S. states where enslavement was practiced grew from 6 to 15, and largely because of cotton. From 1790 until Congress banned the importation of enslaved people in 1808, and that would be under the Constitution, the South imported over 80,000 Africans. By 1860, the year before the outbreak of the Civil War, approximately 1 in 3 residents of the southern state was an enslaved person. Now, this is relevant. This is important. It is a cancer on our history. It's being taught in the classroom. They pass around cotton to demonstrate, well, they know what cotton is. What was that? Well, what the hell did you think the teacher was doing? Making a racial display? How ridiculous is this? How absurd is the NAACP of Loudoun County? How absurd is NBC4 in Washington, D.C. for even reporting on the damn thing? Well, Mark, why are you bringing up? To expose it. That's why. To expose it. Is there nothing better to do in Loudoun County? What next? We're going to take all the cotton products out of our grocery stores, out of our makeup stores, out of our clothing? What the hell is this? It's so stupid. Somebody's offended. Offended by what? That cotton was passed around and they were forced to touch it. Nobody was forced to touch it. They passed it around the classroom. When I was a little kid, they would pass things around the classroom. And you're sitting there and you're offended? You're offended. Well, what was taught in that classroom? The school district said. What was taught in the classroom? Slavery, the invention of the cotton gin, its impact on the importation of black people, the expansion of slavery in the South. It seems to me that's pretty damn relevant. Here I am defending it, and we have the NAACP trashing the fact that cotton was passed around. My God, what the hell is wrong? And no, I'm not making a big deal of this. It is a big deal. If you're a real teacher, and it's a real classroom, and you want to teach real history, you're putting your career on the line. I don't give a damn what the president of the Loudoun County NAACP thinks. What do you think of that? If this is the best she can do. I mean, I'd bet you right now that the vast majority of minorities in Loudoun County agree with me. That the vast majority of Black folks in Loudoun County agree with me that you do want to teach this. You do want to explain what took place. And so what? You pass cotton around in the classroom. Wow, that's offensive. No, it's only offensive if you want it to be offensive. Pastor. Shockingly absurd and ignorant. Truthfully. King Cotton had an enormous role in the lead up to the Civil War and the Civil War. As a matter of fact, I've mentioned this in the past, states like Georgia and yes, South Carolina, one of the reasons they wouldn't sign, they were so resistant, by the way, of the American Revolution, even though their delegates to the Second Continental Congress signed on to the Declaration of Independence, was because of cotton. Because they were selling such enormous amounts of cotton overseas, especially the Britain, they didn't want to go to war with Britain. They were happy. And in fact, you had militia in southern states like Georgia and South Carolina that were fighting for the British against the American Revolution. They said, what the hell do we have to do with Massachusetts and Boston? What the hell do we have to do with Pennsylvania and Philadelphia and New York? Nothing. We're just fine. God forbid if you pass out cotton. I don't know what else is barred. What else can't you pass out? I know you can pass out condoms. I know you can pass out pornographic material. I know you can pass out all kinds of crap and all kinds of S in the classroom. But apparently cotton's on the list. Don't pass it out because it's offensive. And the NAACP, the local NAACP, is very offended because they got some students who were offended. At least one African-American student was offended. He should have been sat down. It should have been explained to him. It should have been put in context by the NAACP. They're the ones who should be applauding the fact that this course is being taught, that this teacher, whomever he or she is, has taught it. Notice there's not a word in this entire report or by these comments by this pastor that anything offensive was said, that there was any racist implications whatsoever. It was the cotton that was passed around. Don't you see? No, I don't. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it can be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. This is the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. You know, the NAACP, there's many branches, used to be such a fantastic entity, especially 100 years ago, 80 years ago. But they reduced themselves to this. Is that right? I'm just saying how absurd it is. All right, we're going to move on. I don't want to waste any more time on this, but I thought you ought to know about it. Anytime we can get information about these things that are going on in the classroom, which isn't often, but a lot's going on, then I need to use it. I need to explain it to you. 14 suspects detained in home invasion, kidnapping at Colorado apartments where viral video surfaced. Remember this in Aurora? This Venezuelan gang? There was no Venezuelan gang in this country 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Now they're all over the damn place. Remember the governor, this guy Polis? Oh, we don't have a gang problem. Remember the mayor? Hey, we don't have a gang problem. All these miscreant, malcontent reprobates. Well, you do have a gang problem, you jerks. Aurora police detained 14 suspects early this morning after officers responded to a report. Let me tell you where this is from. This is from CBS News. Of a home invasion. Remember that apartment building? It was in that apartment building. They broke into one of the apartments. The Edge at Lowry Apartments. The same apartment complex where a viral video surfaced earlier this year showing suspects terrorizing residents with weapons. That video prompted President-elect Donald Trump to target the city in his deportation plan during a campaign stop earlier this fall. Just before 2:30 a.m., officers responded to a report of an armed home invasion involving a stabbing and kidnapping at an apartment in the 1200 block of Dallas Street. Well, what happened? According to police, the preliminary investigation suggests several suspects, 13 males and possibly 3 females, entered an apartment at 1258 Dallas Street occupied by 2 people at about 8:45 p.m. Monday. Investigators say the suspects moved the victims to another apartment building on the property, 1268 Dallas Street, where they were threatened, bound, and assaulted. In fact, they were pistol whipped and they were cut. And they were tortured. An adult male sustained a non-life-threatening stab wound during the incident. The victims were held against their will. They were bound, both the male and the female. They were pistol whipped. They were beaten. They were victimized. They were terrorized, said Aurora Police Chief Todd Chamberlain during a news conference on Tuesday morning. How about that blue state sanctuary state, Colorado? Oh, no. We want the criminals to leave. Well, how do you know they're criminals until they commit criminal acts? Like Venezuela's going to give us a database. You idiot. During the time they were held, the Chief Chamberlain said the suspects went to the victim's apartment and burglarized and took over that apartment, taking items of value that belonged to the victims. Police said the victims were held for several hours until they convinced the suspects to release them, promising not to call authorities. Chief Chamberlain said the victims were released just after 2 a.m., so they held them for 6 hours. Good Lord. And left the property for a friend's residence in another area of Aurora, where they called 911. You know, those of us who are not ultra familiar with Colorado, Aurora, I seem to recall Aurora as sort of a little town, a real American community. Aurora, I think where they made model planes and stuff like that, if I'm right. Multiple Aurora police officers arrived at the apartment complex and detained 14 suspects. As officers interviewed the victims, those suspects have not been identified. It's unclear what led up to the victims being kidnapped, but they're all part of that Venezuelan gang. That they know. This is an incredibly problematic complex. It is an incredibly crime-riddled complex that I think we've been focusing on. The city of Aurora has been focusing on, without question. Attention will not stop until every individual who victimizes somebody else will be held accountable to be removed from that complex, said the chief. Now, the city councilwoman who first brought all this to our attention as a nation, who was attacked for overstating the case, she said one of the things that's not being reported in the news, as you know, they kidnapped a male and a female, is that the female's fingernails were pulled out her fingers, Mr. Producer. The Aurora Police Department has not clarified whether the suspects are tied to a gang from Venezuela, but Chief Chamberlain did say they will find out if the suspects involved in the kidnapping and assault are affiliated with that gang. I think they have since found out that they are. How stupid do they think we are? This is the same apartment complex that went viral that last time. He began talking about the bigger issue of thousands of immigrants arriving in the city, the lack of resources available for the population. He said we're talking about 40,000, 35,000 Venezuelans that were brought into the city of Aurora and dropped into the city. And he means by the Biden regime. There they are, perfectly happy community, and Biden drops 35 the 40,000 Venezuelans in there. Doesn't know if they're gang members or criminals. They don't care. That's the point. Neither does the governor of Colorado. He's a complete jackass. This is not a political discussion. Law enforcement is not political. But I was very clear on what I saw as a law enforcement practitioner and how these individuals were brought into this country in the complete disregard for how they were treated. He went on to say that the Aurora Police Department will do everything in its power to hold those involved accountable, and it's going to be done within the Constitution of the United States. How these individuals were brought into this country in the complete disregard for how they were treated as human beings when they got here. Early this month, Aurora Mayor Mike Hoffman accused Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, this guy Mike Johnston is a complete extremist nutjob, of human dumping, saying he placed migrants in Aurora apartment complexes without the city's knowledge. Look at this. It's like human trafficking between cities and towns. We don't want these people. We don't want these Venezuelan gang members. Send them over there. Now I'm sending them over there now. And Denver is a sanctuary city of the worst order. The worst order. But he issues this statement, does the pathetic mayor of Denver. I echo the strong words that Chief Todd Chamberlain expressed in his news conference. And they go on. Well, talk to your damnable governor. All these blue state governors. Hey, we're a sanctuary state. No, you're a Confederate. That's what you are. There's federal law. There's federal constitutional language. And you jackasses in these blue states that run these states, the governors, and run these cities, the mayors and the city councils, you are nothing but Confederates. You reject federal authority when it comes to this issue of immigration, in which the federal government has plenary authority. And don't give me Texas and Florida and others, where those governors, red state conservative governors, took matters into their own hands to enforce federal law. That's what they were doing. Whereas these blue governors in California, in Illinois, in Michigan, in New York, and all these other places, they are defying federal law. They are defying the federal Constitution. They are Confederates. That's what they are. They don't give a damn about their citizens. This is all about empowering the Democrat Party. I've said it over and over and over again. That's what it's about. They know one day these people will vote. Little Dick Durbin of Illinois, there's another one. He already let the cat out of the bag. They already did. I already told you they would. We got to get these people, into amnesty, legalize them. They're hardworking people, you don't know who's what, you little jerk. You overwhelm the system. You vet people. You have a managed administrative system. But you guys flooded the system. You flooded it while you had Mr. Dementia in the Oval Office, who was all for it. Bring in his millions, as many as you can. Get them in here. They'll get lost into the country. We'll get them amnesty. We'll give them parole. We'll do all kinds of stuff. Then they'll have children. We'll claim birthright citizenship. Look at this. We'll have 100 million aliens in the country before you know it. And listen to me. We've got over 20 million illegal aliens. Remember, for years, decades, they were saying we had 11 million. It never changed. And then Biden comes along. We get 10 to 12 million more. We have over 20 million illegal aliens. If they bring in 5 people each at some point, you have 100 million aliens in the country, in a country of 320 million people. That's what the Democrats are counting on. Look at California. They don't give a damn what's happening in California. The governor there, the legislature, which has supermajorities. What gave them supermajorities were all the immigrants that came into the country, got amnesty, had children. That's how they got supermajorities. Where the rest of the population, by the way, of every background, color, creed, and religion, trying to get the hell out of there. Nevada, Tennessee, Florida, Texas. That's where they're headed. That's where they're going. The citizenry, that's where they're going. And so, see, the Democrats are thrilled. They want California everywhere. That's it. They want power. They're power hungry. This is why we play music every now and then. You know that, Mr. Producer? This is why you play music every now and then, so you don't have a heart attack. By the way, did you see that the stock market is down for, is it 9 or 10 days in a row? That hasn't happened since Jimmy Carter, just so you know. Will it go back up? Yes. But it's very volatile. I just wanted to point that out to you. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you can even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. This is Mark Levin wishing you a Happy New Year. Now back to the best of me. Well, the shooter at the Abundant Life Christian School, 15-year-old, not 17 as reported last night, Natalie Samantha Rupnow is her name. And New York Post, the teen girl fatally shot a student and teacher and left 2 more pupils clinging to life at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin on Monday has been identified. She brought a handgun to campus, a 9mm, and opened fire around 11 a.m. inside a classroom during study hall. The teenage student teacher were pronounced dead at the scene, while another teacher and 5 more students were wounded. 2 of them are in critical condition, life-threatening injuries clinging to life, said Madison Police Chief Sean Barnes. Rupnow sustained a self-inflicted gunshot wound and was pronounced dead on the way to the hospital. An alleged manifesto. Funny how I thought there'd be something like this, some kind of manifesto. An alleged manifesto espousing angry, hateful views is circulating online that some social media users claim belong to her. But Chief Barnes said police have not yet been able to confirm that document. I don't jump ahead on stuff like this. I don't need to be the first guy out of the out of the race here, in the race, or out of the barn. I wait for the facts to come in. So you'll not hear me recite what's in that unless it's confirmed. We haven't been able to verify that it's authentic. We're certainly aware that it's been posted, he said, adding his department is working with the FBI to investigate the writings. SWAT teams raided Rupnow's family's home on Monday night, busting through the front door and conducting a thorough search inside, WISN reported. The home is about 8 miles from the school, which is in the state capital. The K-12 school is a little more than 400 students, a tiny little private Christian school. And I'm sure the parents were sending their kids there because they thought it was safe, that they wouldn't be propagandized and indoctrinated with all kinds of perversion and other crap. Rupnow opened fire inside a classroom during a study hall filled with students from different grades. As the gunfire erupted, a second grader in a nearby classroom called 911 for help. Can you imagine? A second grader? And police were on the scene in about 3 minutes. Can't get there any faster. That's remarkable. Investigators are still working to determine a motive and have been interviewing the shooter's father. At this point, there's no reason to believe her parents committed a crime, says the chief. Barnes questioned how Rupnow was able to get her hands on the gun leading up to the deadly school shooting. By the way, attention radical left-wing Democrat Party media. It's not legal in Wisconsin for a 15-year-old to own a 9mm, except for exceptional circumstances, which wouldn't apply here. So I thought you'd want to know. Not that you give a damn, because you'll still, You'll still get on your high horse. Every child, every person in that building is a victim and will be a victim forever. And I know what that chief means. He means the psychological and emotional impact is you can't unravel it. Barnes also addressed speculation online the shooter was transgender in response to a question, but he stressed how the shooter's identity was not important. Whether or not he was, they were transgender is something that may come out later. But for what we're doing right now, today, literally 8 hours after a mass shooting in a school in Madison, it's of no consequence at this time, he said. Maybe to him it's not, but the public wants to know. Many in the public want to know. If it was a racial killing or an anti-Semitic killing or God knows what other kind of killing, people want to know. President Biden called for common-sense gun control measures. Listen, I don't even know what that means. Like I said, she's 15 years old. She's not allowed to own this weapon in Wisconsin. What else? What are you going to do? You going to search every house? I don't know. But all they do is they throw out these canards, they throw out these shibboleths, they throw out these ambiguous statements like suddenly they're going to fix something if they pass some kind of gun control law. No, they're not. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Let's see here. Luigi Mangione has now been officially charged in Manhattan with the equivalent of first-degree murder and with a terror allegation and 2 lesser counts of murder. But if he's convicted, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. They don't have the death penalty in New York. That's good, right? No, it's not good, of course. And this commissioner, Jessica Tisch, the New York City Police Commissioner, she says things sometimes that I strongly disagree with. She seems incredibly political to me. But she said something here which is, I think, a statement of fact, and it's absolutely true. Any rational human being, and unfortunately we're surrounded by a lot of irrational human beings. Any attempt to rationalize this is vile, reckless, offensive to our deeply held principles of justice. Well, she ought to tell that to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who've now twisted themselves into pretzels to try and undo what they said. You know, you don't do murder is vicious and vile, but no. That's not appropriate, period. So this guy is, they've got him in 1,000 different ways. I think Pennsylvania was very careful. I think New York's being very careful. And just a matter of this playing out, I'm sure. Kamala Harris was in Prince George's County, Maryland today. We haven't seen her for a while. She is the vice president, you know. We haven't seen Biden in a while. You know, it's funny. I don't miss them. Do you miss them, Mr. Producer? In fact, in many ways, I'm just glad they're kind of hiding out, doing whatever they do during a period like this, you know, thinking about who they're going to pardon or preemptory pardons, and we'll get to Dizzy Lizzie Cheney in a moment. But here's her words of wisdom. Cut 2, go.
Of course, it's another school shooting. Another community being torn about and torn apart by
gun people are being slaughtered in the state of California as I speak. She was the DA in San Francisco. She was the Attorney General in San Francisco. The Democrats control everything in California. L.A. is one of the most dangerous cities in the country, as are these other cities. And they just talk like they have no role in anything, like they haven't been involved in anything, like they're newly minted politicians who have great new ideas. They have no ideas. They have no records of actually doing something effective or substantive about any of this stuff. And notice there's never any discussion when people are slaughtered every damn weekend in every city in this country. Mostly black on black crime, not exclusively, but mostly. And now, sort of Venezuelan on black crime, but that for another day. The point is, it gets almost no attention. I don't understand why. I really don't. You got the NAACP in Loudoun County worried about cotton being handed out in the classroom. Shouldn't they be worried about other things? And not just the NAACP, all of us. All of us. There's slaughter going on in this country. On average, 16 to 18 million people are murdered every year. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. No, it's not because of guns. It's because of the people who use the guns. It's because of lax judges, particularly in the inner cities, for some insane reason, and radical left-wing prosecutors who are easy on criminals for some insane reason, who get elected over and over again for some insane reason. Go ahead.
And, of course, our nation mourns for those who were killed, and we pray for the recovery of those who were injured and for the entire community. But, look, as we hold our loved ones close this holiday season, we as a nation must renew our commitment to end the horror
of gun. Your lectures from you really are, they turn my stomach, actually. You didn't secure the border. The number of murderers and criminals coming across that border is incalculable, to be perfectly honest. The number of illegal weapons coming across that border, nobody even talks about it but me. The drugs that come across and slaughter our citizenry in every walk of life. I mean, this is really something coming from her. She was part of the defund the police movement, if you'll recall. And then she backed off that, but was still undermining the cops. And then they talk about guns, gun control, guns control. Well, then control them. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, and how are you going to do it? They're not going to do a damn thing that's effective because it's not effective. People are going to kill people, are going to get weapons. You think they're worried about increased sentencing and penalties for having an illegal weapon? What are you talking about? They're killing people. Go ahead.
Violence, both mass shootings and everyday gun violence that touches so many communities in our nation.
All right, you know what? Thank you, but no thank you. Thank you, but no thank you. Then we have this guy, Chris Murphy of the Nutmeg State, Connecticut. He's a real nut job. David Hogue, running for vice chair of the DNC. Got to go bolder on gun violence. No, you got to go bolder on protecting citizens. Protecting citizens. Stop being soft on crime. Stop supporting soft prosecutors. George Soros owns the Democrat Party, effectively. Owns the Democrat Party. Look at these clown prosecutors. And they always want criminals let out of prisons. It's an amazing thing. Call it criminal justice reform. There's real criminal justice reform, and then it's the Democrats who call it criminal justice reform, but they want the prisons emptied, pretty much. And they don't care who comes into the country, pretty much. When you have open borders, that's the way it works. And then they want you to believe guns, that's the answer. Just take guns out of the hands of people. Even though we have relatively strict gun laws in many places, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned. You can't just go to an NRA show and buy a brand new, spanking new 9mm or 357, which is what I like, or something like that, without getting a sign-off from the federal government. Ask Hunter Biden. He'll tell you all about it. Or he'll tell you how to defy it, I guess. The Democrats said nobody's prosecuted for that. Remember? They were soft on that. Very soft on that. So this guy, David Hogue, whoever he is running for the vice chair of the DNC. Cut 5, go.
I want to help build a Democratic Party, not one that I'm just calling out publicly, but one that I'm actively working, trying to fix on the inside to make sure that what happened to my classmates is never happening again. And our party is one of the best ways of doing that, but we have to be bolder. We have to go further.
I know who he is. I remember him now. From Parkland, Mr. Producer? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, go ahead.
Issue of gun violence, and not just address how does somebody get a gun like the AR-15, but address the hatred.
She didn't have an AR-15. She had a 9mm. What are we going to do about that? These are the same people who don't believe in metal detectors. You heard the police chief in Madison, no, we don't do that. Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Yeah, I remembered him. So he's not a bad person. It's just that he's wrong. Why shouldn't we have metal detectors in our schools? I don't get it. We have them almost everywhere else. We have them for state capitals. We have them for the U.S. Capitol. I mean, you had to go through them at the stadium. I guess they call it Northwest Stadium now, the Commander Stadium. For the Army-Navy game, everybody had to go through a metal detector. But it comes to the schools, no, this is a safe place, we don't do it. Then you make the school a target when you don't do it. It's so asinine. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you could get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. You're listening to the Best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. You might remember this little fella, Robert Reich. He was the labor secretary, I believe, under Clinton. Well, he's moved even further left. He really is quite the, in my personal opinion, the Marxist socialist. He puts out videos. I mock him often on my Blaze program. But he's on the Morning Schmo Show. And he sounds like and talks like a Marxist. And these guys have been mainstreamed in the Democrat Party. They've been mainstreamed by the media. Their ideologies are not only preposterous and dangerous, they're nuts. And so I want you to listen to what he says, and then I want to respond to this. Cut 9, go.
I think the biggest problem with having so many billionaires at the top of government is that billionaires don't exactly know how normal people live. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the way people get to the top of the Trump administration is by providing a lot of money. I mean, Elon Musk contributed, the latest data I've seen say that Elon Musk contributed something in the order of $277 million to getting Trump elected. And he has made, since the Trump election, in terms of his actual net worth, he has increased his net worth by 170.
Let's stop for a second. Who's president of the United States? Joe Biden. Who runs the Senate? The Democrats. So if Elon Musk made $170 billion, if that's the case, he didn't make it all at once, but if he increased his wealth during the Biden-Harris administration and when the Democrats controlled the Senate. Donald Trump doesn't control anything. the power of the purse is really controlled, yes, by the House, but ultimately the Senate and the president get their say. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about, and neither does he. It's all this Marxist claptrap. That's number one. Billionaires versus normal people. What's a normal person? They call all of us neo-Nazis, so I guess we're not normal people. So who's a normal person? A legal alien? Who's a normal person? A Democrat? Is that it? So what does that mean? And too many billionaires at the top. Too many billionaires at the top. Providing a lot of money. I don't know. When we had enemy governments like communist China, providing a lot of money to the Biden family, did anybody hear Robert Reich complain about that? That seems to me to be a hell of a lot worse. Doesn't it to you? And which Democrat billionaire has he criticized? Bill Gates? Warren Buffett? I'm just curious. George Soros? The big daddy behind the Democrat Party? Now, he doesn't oppose billionaires. He only opposes billionaires who disagree with him. But I am quite curious about this. So what's a normal person? They don't know how normal people live. I guess they do at the Harvard faculty. Is that right? They know how normal people live? The Obamas know how normal people live? As they fly from one mansion to another and use one yacht after another? They know how normal people live? What does that mean? And why are billionaires all thrown together? They're billionaires and they're billionaires. They're billionaires that have created hundreds of thousands of jobs. There's billionaires who've created life-saving drugs and technologies. There's billionaires who inherit their money. There's all kinds of billionaires. Every billionaire is not the same. So this Marxist claptrap right there on MSNBC. MSNBC is owned by Comcast. Comcast is a multi-billion-dollar oligopoly. And the head people at Comcast, the main owners, the majority owners, are billionaires. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Yeah, very ironic. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, he's created his own space program. He's created his own automobile industry. God knows how many people he employs who get paychecks, who get pensions, who get health care. A lot more than Robert Reich, who's a normal person, you see. This class warfare crap, this Marxist crap, is going to be the undoing of this country. Go ahead.
Dollars since the Trump election. Now, that's a pretty good return on investment.
What do you mean return on investment, you little bastard? What are you even talking about? What investment are you talking about? Donald Trump's not even in office. He hasn't made any decisions for the government. Return on investment? Go ahead.
Is such a high return on investment and a high return for many of the other billionaires and multimillionaires in the Trump administration is that they are no longer.
Now, the problem is, little fella, that under your regime that you support, Biden-Harris, and their Marxist socialist policies, normal people, yes, working people, as you say, the middle class, they were sweating bullets. And they still are until we broom this administration out. With inflation, with the cost of food, the cost of fuel, the cost of everything. It's one of the main reasons your team Marxism, lost. Go ahead.
That they're no longer going to have to be worried about as many regulations, as many lawsuits.
No, regulations affect us, we the people, our lawnmowers, our ceiling fans, our washing machines, our dryers, our dishwashers, our automobiles. They affect us, you little schmo, not the billionaires. Billionaires can do whatever they want. They affect we the people. This is why I take the time to parse and unravel what these Marxist socialists say. Because these generalities, oh, that sounds right, you know, the billionaire. What are you talking about? The most powerful entity in this country is the federal government. It's not a billionaire. It's not even a collection of billionaires. Our federal government lost $250 billion, and they lose $250 billion every single year. You don't pay taxes to billionaires. You pay taxes to the federal government, those of us who pay them. Knocking on your door isn't some big corporation. It's the IRS, the enforcers for big government. Inflation isn't created by billionaires. Inflation is created by political hacks who spend more money than we give them. Open borders wasn't created by billionaires. It was created by these fools. Crime in the streets wasn't created by billionaires. It was created by these fools. I'm no special pleader for billionaires. I'm never going to be a billionaire. I don't give a damn about being a billionaire. It means nothing to me. But the entity that affects my life in so many ways, in ways that it's not even supposed to, is the government. It's not a billionaire, and it's not a collection of billionaires. And this buffoon, this normal person, this phony self-appointed elite thinks the answer is more government, more control, more iron-fisted centralized police state. That's what he supports. Him and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC and all the rest of the Marxist socialists. I'm not worried about any billionaire. I'm worried about the iron fist of the federal government knocking on my door. That's what I'm worried about. I'll be right back. You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. This is Mark Levin wishing you a happy new year. Now back to the best of me. Now, I mentioned Dizzy Lizzy. I never forget what I mention, except when I do. Dizzy Lizzy. You might recall this weekend in one of my opening statements, I explained that what criminal cases could be brought against members of this January 6th committee. And I explained behind this microphone, the speech and debate clause, that covers Congress doing its usual congressional activities. But when members of Congress or a committee of Congress steps out of its lane and is seeking to actually participate in or interfere in or to cause an executive branch action like a criminal investigation, or in the case of Donald Trump, they were calling for him to be indicted on several counts, that's not protected by the speech and debate clause. It's simply not. If you refer information to the executive branch without comment or with a generic comment, that's one thing. But when you're urging criminal charges, that's a whole nother story. And why does that matter? Because if you're withholding relevant evidence that could be useful to the defense or to the individual you're targeting, if you're censoring information, if you're obstructing the production of information, if you're tampering with witnesses in order to get a response that you want, and then you're using that information to try and convince the executive branch to criminally indict somebody, that's out of line. And I guarantee they were withholding exculpatory information. So our friend, Representative Barry Loudermilk from Georgia. This comes out today from Just the News. House GOP accuses Liz Cheney of tampering with January 6 witnesses. Ask FBI to investigate criminality. Perfect. That's exactly right. We salute you, Congressman, and your staff. Interim report by Representative Barry Louderback concludes January 6th attack was preventable, highlights intelligence and security failures, and Cheney's possible shenanigans. The word shenanigans is one of the favorite words of my wife, by the way. The House Administration Oversight Subcommittee and its chairman, Barry Loudermilk, on Tuesday, that would be today, released an interim report on the January 6th Capitol riot, concluding the attack was preventable, also asking for an investigation into Liz Cheney for criminally tampering with a witness during the Democrat-led congressional inquiry of the tragedy. Quote from Loudermilk, based on the evidence obtained by this subcommittee, numerous federal laws were likely broken by Liz Cheney, the former vice chair of the January 6th Select Committee, and these violations should be investigated by the FBI. The report released by the House Administration Oversight Subcommittee and its chairman, Barry Loudermilk, stated. That's what's in this news story. Evidence uncovered by the subcommittee revealed, and I'm quoting, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney tampered with at least one witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, by secretly communicating with Hutchinson without Hutchinson's attorney's knowledge. This secret communication with a witness is improper and likely violates 18 U.S.C. 1512. That's that obstruction statute that they used against Trump in many of these January 6s, remember? Such action is outside the due functioning of the legislative process and therefore not protected by the speech and debate clause. I would agree with that. Federal law criminalizes witness tampering of varying degrees and subjects a defendant to as many as 20 years in prison. And we will post this article after the program, and it has the report link, the full report within it if you'd like to read it. The report also came at former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, Cheney's star witness at the nationally televised hearings, alleging that Cheney encouraged false testimony about a handwritten document, noting her sensational claim that former President Donald Trump tried to commandeer his presidential limousine that day to take it to the Capitol was directly refuted by the Secret Service. Louderback's report suggested Cheney also bore responsibility for Hutchinson's testimony. The report says, quote, the FBI must also investigate Representative Cheney for violating 18 U.S.C. 1622, which prohibits any person from procuring another person to commit perjury, the report said. Based on the evidence obtained by this subcommittee, I'm quoting, Hutchinson committed perjury when she lied under oath to the Select Committee. Cheney pushed back on Louderback's report in a statement to Fox News Digital, saying the report, quote, intentionally disregards the truth and the Select Committee's tremendous weight of evidence. Yeah, but there's a ton of stuff that was destroyed, Liz. How do you explain that? Who was involved in that? Who had knowledge of that? It seems to me that's very important information. January 6th showed Donald Trump for who he really is, Cheney said. A cruel, okay, whatever. Then she goes on rambling. That has nothing to do with what these allegations are aimed at you. Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson, the other reprobates on this committee. You're being accused of witness tampering. You're being accused of obstruction in your provision of information to the Department of Justice, to the special prosecutor. You plead not guilty. But what the committee is saying is you need to be investigated, you need to be brought under oath in front of a grand jury, and your statements need to be tested. That's what they're saying. Do you have a problem with that, Liz? That would be more due process than you gave anybody on your committee. The report confirms numerous stories reported by Just the News over the last 2 years that have substantially changed the public's understanding of that tragic day, including Bullet. The Select Committee failed to preserve significant evidence from its investigation. More than 1 terabyte of data in total. That includes missing videos of witness interviews. I might add that we have followed Congressman Loudermilk from the beginning here, and have done a very comprehensive job of reporting what he has been finding. Bullet star witness Cassidy Hutchinson made significant material changes to her original testimony with the help of Vice Chair Cheney in an errata sheet where she introduced new narratives, some that conflicted with Secret Service testimony. Bullet, Speaker Pelosi took some responsibility for not ensuring adequate Capitol security in unaired footage recorded as part of the HBO documentary being made by her daughter. We never saw that from the committee, did we? Bullet, Department of Defense officials delayed the deployment of a National Guard at the Capitol despite standing orders from President Trump to keep his speech in the Capitol safe. Now, Louderback accompanied the interim report with a personal letter to his House colleagues saying his review of the Democrats' January 6th committee provided evidence that Congress had ventured into the business of misleading Americans for political gain and imploring them to help reverse that dynamic. He wrote, quote, Americans expect and deserve a government that is small in size, limited in scope, fully accountable to the people as our founders intended. The actions of some elected officials and certain government bureaucrats in the aftermath of January 6, 2021 are evidence of how we have ventured far away from those basic principles of our constitutional republic. We will keep an eye on this. This is something I've been talking about, something I've been encouraging, as a matter of fact. The facts have been collected by the committee. The fact is a ton of information was destroyed. The fact is that this committee unanimously voted and asked the United States Department of Justice to bring criminal charges against Donald Trump. That's way out of the speech and debate clause protection, particularly if you're withholding potential information that would have been useful to Donald Trump and his co-defendants. Exculpatory information, other information. And I do think Liz Cheney and Ben Thompson and the rest of them need to be questioned under oath. Jamie Raskin, about what they knew and about the destruction of information. And I don't know why anybody would oppose that, especially them. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You voted big government out and efficient government in. Well, now it's time to trim the fat from big wireless. If you're still on the other big name providers, I have one question. Why? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, gives you the exact same service on the exact same towers with better customer service because they're based right here in the United States, all for half the cost. That's right. There's simply no need to spend $85 or $100 per person on your wireless bill, not when you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspot, just $35 a month. My friends, the average family of four could save about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk while enjoying one of America's most dependable 5G networks. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Levin. Again, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month with Pure Talk, America's wireless company. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about litigation. President Trump really won that case because ABC News and George Stephanopoulos settled for $15 million plus $1 million. My calculation, that's $16 million. Because they accused him of being convicted of rape. He was not convicted of rape. But there are other individuals who've said the same thing. You know, you've got people like Acosta running around and others. You know, we got to stand up to this. ABC News buckled. No, they committed libel. They committed libel. And this is the fairest way to hold people like you punk, responsible. It's not a war on the free press. It's a war on the lying scum. But ABC News and George Stephanopoulos weren't the only ones. You're about to hear a flash montage with George Conway, Representative Greg Landsman, Democrat, Ohio, Amicia Cross, MSNBC, Brittany Cooper, MSNBC, Abby Phillip, and others. Cut 11, go.
If you don't want to be held liable for rape, like Donald Trump has, don't grab the woman's genitalia. If you don't want to be held liable for defaming the woman that you raped, don't keep lying about what you did.
Trump is unfit for office. He tried to overturn an election. That alone is disqualifying. And not to mention the fact that a court held him liable for rape, that he's a convicted felon.
At the end of the day, what we know from Donald Trump is that he has over 24 credible allegations of sexual assault. We know that he was found liable for rape. We know that this is somebody who has a long-standing history of being aggressive towards women.
But the question that I have is, why do we have a significant swath of the country that is so ready to give the democracy away for a man who is a, criminal, has been civilly held liable for rape? He's a terrible businessman.
I'll take those concerns seriously if you also express concerns about the allegations. He's been found liable for rape. Donald
sexual assault. That's the same thing.
Okay, so that's also true.
Not state of New York.
So we're not going to litigate those other things, but you can't just pick and choose.
Wow. Donald Trump could get rich all over again. by suing these people. And they're arrogant about it. They're arrogant about it. Donald Trump was not convicted of rape, and yet that was the accusation. And that was the accusation. And George Conway, as I understand, there was one story out there that he was one of the ones behind the case that was brought. If I'm wrong, George is free to call the show and have a discussion with me, which, of course, I'll never do. He's a coward. But nonetheless, we can straighten that out. So, George, what do you think, George Conway? You think you're liable for millions of dollars because you intentionally stated that Donald Trump was convicted of rape? Can we play that again at the top there, Mr. Producer, what George Conway actually said? Go ahead.
If you don't want to be held liable for rape, like Donald Trump has, don't grab the woman's genitalia.
Okay, stop right there. There you go. Pretty black and white, don't you think? Yeah, I think so. So he could be subjected to a libel suit. I think he should be, given his conduct in the dark shadow and under the radar, trying to take out Trump and other people. Time to expose that guy. Greg Landsman, Democrat, Ohio, he's another one. Cross at MSNBC, I don't even think she's there anymore. Am I mixing her up with somebody? It doesn't really matter. Brittany Cooper, Abby Phillip. Now, they were even corrected. But this Bakari Solar said that's the same thing. So that's the same thing. So when Tara Reid was molested by Joe Biden in a dark hallway on Capitol Hill, when she was about 27 years old, a staffer, fairly naive about the ways of Washington, where Lord senators are hiding behind every, what is it? Behind every door, I guess. How come she wasn't believed? How come Joe Biden wasn't called a rapist by these people, huh? How come? They don't care about all the women sold into sex slavery on the southern border. They support an open border. They support an open border. They backed Bill Clinton right to the end, despite the fact Juanita Broderick accused him of rape. Others accused him of molestation. Didn't matter. He's their guy. Doesn't matter. Ted Kennedy, Chappaquiddick, his brutal treatment of women, was a drunk, may I say with all due respect. They love Ted Kennedy, the lion of the Senate. And we have all kinds of people in the media who are a bunch of ghouls and slime balls and perverts. We know of some of them, but there's a whole bunch more, you see. The hypocrites that they are. But Donald Trump won that case, big case. I think you ought to sue George Conway. Look, I don't advise them. They can do what they want. But there's Conway. That was black and white. What he said was pretty obvious. He was held liable for rape or words to that effect, which is not true. Hey, Georgie, I recommend you get on one of your TV shows and apologize as fast as you can. That's my recommendation. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, we got a ruling in part from the acting state judge, Judge Merchan. This is CNN. Judge rules Trump does not have immunity from hush money conviction. President-elect Donald Trump does not have immunity from prosecution in the so-called hush money case in which a jury found him guilty earlier this year. Judge Juan Merchan ruled tonight. The judge said the testimony at the trial relates entirely to unofficial conduct entitled to no immunity protections. Story is developing. Why won't these guys listen to me, Mr. Producer? First of all, immunity is a good argument, but there's no great argument in front of this judge. He won't care. That's number one. Number two, the better argument, the strongest argument is the supremacy clause, the fact that this acting state judge was making decisions about federal campaign laws, the fact that this acting state judge allowed a misdemeanor state statute, which had already told, to become a felony statute by using a federal law. So that violates the Supremacy Clause. He has no authority whatsoever in this regard, in addition to the fact that the non-disclosure agreements is what we call them, not hush money. The non-disclosure agreements did not violate campaign law, but that's not his decision to make, this judge. In other words, he's way out of his lane. And I keep explaining this. And then, of course, we have the Department of Justice memos, 1973 and 2000, which say you can't indict a sitting president. And their explanation would obviously apply to this for two reasons. Number one, they didn't just say indict. The whole trial process would cripple the head of the executive branch. And there's only one head of the executive branch under our Constitution. There's only two people elected nationwide, and that's the president and the vice president. But the president has special powers that the vice president does not. Vice president almost no power. President has enormous authority. And so how would that apply to the states? And I have to keep educating the phony law professors and the phony former federal prosecutors. It's very simple. Very simple. And it only applies to a president, not to a vice president or anything else. The state doesn't have the power to essentially reverse federalism and interfere with a presidential administration. That is, the argument is that you don't have a federal charge against a sitting president because that would undermine the office of the president. So, well, then you can't have a state charge. The state doesn't have the authority to interfere in the federal constitutional construct. So the Supremacy Clause, among other things. And so we explained, Arthur Ferguson and I, we explained. They're common law arguments that the court has taken up rarely, but it takes them up. It has taken them up. A writ of mandamus, a writ of fill in the blank, it doesn't matter. The Supreme Court took up Bush versus Gore. There was no straight path to the Supreme Court. But the brilliant Ted Olson filed what he called an emergency appeal, whatever that means. And the court said, yeah, we're going to take that up as a writ of certiorari, not to get into the dirt here, which would be a statutory appeal. But there was no statutory authority. But the court didn't care. It wanted to hear the case. Here, you can call it a writ of certiorari, a writ of mandamus, a writ of whatever you want. You bring it to the door of the Supreme Court. They either take it or they don't. And that's the problem here. You're stuck in the gulag of the New York Democrat Party's so-called justice system. Now, this guy, Mershon, is a fraud and a phony. He's a reprobate. He's a hack. And he doesn't want to let go of this case. He needs to be forced to let go of this case. Not by a federal district judge, not by some federal appellate panel or federal appellate court. Stop wasting time. Do as I suggest. And if you fail on that front, so be it. There's really not much else you can do. You can simultaneously keep going up the appellate ladder in New York. But good God, how many times do I have to explain this, Rich? I explain it here. I explain it on Blaze. I explain it on Fox. I explain it over and over again. I've written about it. I don't know. Well, the spectacle of going to the Supreme Court, there's no spectacle. If the court says no, the court says no. It's called the justice system. Anyway, I want to move on. We'll keep an eye on this. Don't worry. This is ground zero for this stuff. Dear friend of mine, Paul Kengor, professor at a great college, Grove City. To me, he's the expert, really, on the old Soviet communism, Brezhnev and before, Brezhnev and after. And, Paul, I wanted to bring you on the program. You wrote extensively about documents that were uncovered, one in particular, but documents that were uncovered in the old Soviet Union when it collapsed, that demonstrated that John Tunney, then a senator from California, Ted Kennedy, then a senator from Massachusetts, also a presidential wannabe on a fairly regular basis, that they worked, particularly Kennedy, to try and defeat Ronald Reagan with the help of the communists in the Soviet Union. Please explain, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good to be with you again. Yeah, so now we know this from an actual document, okay? And that, that's the really, so if you're looking for a smoking gun here, okay, and the document is no less than a Soviet KGB document, okay? And I'm looking at it right now, and the date on it was May 14th, 1983, and it was written by the head of the KGB, Viktor Chebrikov, and he's writing to the head of the Soviet Union, Yuri Andropov, right? Soviet General Secretary Yuri Andropov. And by the way, you know Soviet history really well. Andropov had headed the KGB himself for a long time and was just a really sinister, nasty, SOB at the KGB. Killer. Yeah, he really was. He was horrible. So this is May 14th, 1983, and it says at the top of it that it's confidential. The way that we got the document, it was the early 1990s. Boris Yeltsin was opening up the Soviet archives, and a reporter from the BBC and London Times named Tim Sebastian was the first one to report this. In fact, he reported it in the London Times, January 2nd, 1992. He reported a little bit about the document, showed a picture of the upper right corner of it. That was it. And then there was a rush on the archives. It was the Central Committee Archives of the Soviet Union. There was a rush on the archives to get a copy of this document. I got a full document. I got it in Russian. I got it translated in English. I published it in a couple books, including my 2006 book on Ronald Reagan, The Crusader. That's actually the book that's the basis of the Reagan movies, so it's a pretty well-known book. And the actual statement on it says confidential offer, and it's written to the head of it says, I'm looking at it right now, the subject head, special importance, and then it says, regarding Senator Kennedy's request to the General Secretary of the Communist Party, YV or Yuri Andropov. And then it says in the memo that Kennedy is very troubled about U.S.-Soviet relations, the deterioration in U.S.-Soviet relations. And he said the problem here, Mark, was not the murderous despot in the Soviet Union, but Ronald Reagan. The problem was Reagan's belligerence. All right, according to Kennedy, as expressed in this document. And then it said this is made worse by Reagan's intransigence, his stubbornness. And in fact, Chebrikov said, according to Kennedy, the current threat is due to the president's refusal to engage any modification to his politics. And then further, Mark, it says that refusal was exacerbated. It's made worse by Reagan's political success, which, even worse, is making him really reelectable because the election is coming up. So by the fourth and fifth paragraph of Chebrikov's memo to Andropov, he really gets to the thrust of what Kennedy's offering. And he says, Reagan, he's soaring to reelection. Is there anywhere where he's vulnerable? Because they know he's really popular. I mean, Reagan's on the way to winning 49 out of 50 states. And so Chebrikov said, according to Kennedy, the only real threats to Reagan are problems of war and peace and Soviet-American relations. Quote, these issues, according to the senator, will without a doubt become the most important of the election campaign. Kennedy believes that, given the state of current affairs and in the interest of peace, it would be prudent and timely to undertake the following steps to counter the militaristic politics of Reagan. So right here, right, Kennedy has made an offer. It was, as you said, it was communicated directly to the head of the KGB by John Tunney, who had been a Democratic senator from California and was Teddy's law school roommate at University of Virginia. And so they offer for Andropov to meet with Ted Kennedy in Moscow for a personal meeting. And the memo says, Chebrikov wrote this to Andropov, the main purpose of the meeting, according to the senator, would be to arm Soviet officials with explanations regarding problems of nuclear disarmament so they would be better prepared and more convincing during appearances in the USA. Kennedy said a strategy was needed to help the Soviets, quote, influence Americans. Influence Americans. So he offered to, Kennedy would fly to Moscow. This is all in the document. He would go there in August or September of 1983. He would arrange televised interviews with Andropov to come to the USA. Kennedy and his friends said Chebrikov would help out, and he named specifically Walter Cronkite and Barbara Walters. They're both listed by name in the memo. And because Reagan is good at propaganda, right, this strategy to influence Americans, especially with the election coming up, this would be a crucial thing to do in order to counter Reagan. And by the way, the only thing that stopped this, and you know this history well, September 1st, 1983, the Soviets under Andropov blew Korean airliner 007 out of the sky, killing over 200 passengers, including, I think it was 69, 70 Americans. And then after that, Andropov got sick, Andropov died. But this was a direct offer by Kennedy within the context of Reagan's reelection campaign to influence the Soviets directly to the KGB, and made by Kennedy liaison through a confidential memo. So
now, let me ask you a couple of questions, Paul. Let me ask you a question. So this comes out, you point out, in 92, 93, correct?
Yeah,
when does it
London
come out?
Times, January 2nd, 1992.
1992. Ted Kennedy dies in 2009.
Right,
so between then and the death of Ted Kennedy, really the media didn't do much about it, did they? They never really confronted him, or if they did, it was a real hit and miss, wasn't it?
They did absolutely nothing whatsoever, to the point where when I was told about the document from a Ukrainian American who said that he heard that I was working on this book on the Cold War, and he said, you need to know about this document. He described it to me in an email. I said, you got to be kidding. I mean, there's no way. You got a document that says that? No way. And he said, yes, I'm telling you. And so he sent it to me. Also involved in this, the late, great Herb Romerstein, who was very well-versed, Venona Papers, Richard Pipes, the Harvard professor for 50, 60 years. I had Pipes read it. Democrats, Jerry and Leona Schechter, who wrote the book Sacred Secrets on Oppenheimer. They were old Cold War Democrats. In fact, Jerry worked for Jimmy Carter, died not that long ago. They were my agents for this book. They read it, reviewed it all very, very carefully. And I reported it in 2006. I published the whole document.
All right, so let me ask you some more questions before we run out of time. Did the Democrat Party denounce Ted Kennedy for his treason?
Of course not.
Did the media denounce Ted Kennedy for his treason?
Crickets, not a word.
The Lion of the Senate, isn't that what they called him?
Sure did. Sure did.
And they looked up to him, and they embraced him, and they considered him a great leader, and he was on the Judiciary Committee and other committees, correct?
Absolutely right.
Don't you find it a little odd then, Professor Kengor, when we come back, my question to you, is all of a sudden the Democrats are very concerned about Russia. They create this whole Russia collusion lie, which was a lie from beginning to end and in between. And now apparently they have problems with some of President Trump's nominees. Let me ask you this, and then we'll go to the break and come back. Is there any nominee that Donald Trump has proposed that has done anything of the kind that Ted Kennedy did, this aggressive, extensive effort to work with the communist regime to defeat his political opposition, the sitting president of the United States? Answer that when I come back. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
This is Mark Levin wishing you a Happy New Year. Now back to the best of me. By the way, AP is reporting a 17-year-old female student is the murderer in that case in the Christian school in Wisconsin. A 17-year-old female student was the murderer. Paul Kengor, so over the break, you had time to noodle over this. Can you think of anybody that Donald Trump has even nominated that comes close to doing what Ted Kennedy did?
No, absolutely not. You know, as I was thinking about this, Mark, so the equivalent to this today would be like a Republican senator in the spring of 2023 secretly contacting the head of the Russian KGB today, which is called the FSB, with a confidential offer from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin to undermine Joe Biden's 2024 reelection bid. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what that would be. That would be the exact equivalent. And with a document to prove it. So, you know, the Russian hoax, collusion hoax, and everything, they came up with absolutely nothing. You'd have an actual memo from the current head of the FSB KGB written to Putin. Yeah, with an offer from a Republican senator, from Donald Trump to fly to Moscow to meet with Putin with the direct point of undermining Biden's 2024
And just to underscore your point, they impeached him over nothing. A phone call with Zelensky, which was a perfectly fine phone call. So imagine, you're 100% right. I bring this up because at Tulsi Gabbard, you know, there's a lot of criticism of her involving Syria and Russia and so forth and so on. But I'm looking at this Ted Kennedy thing, and when I find these left-wing Democrat senators say what they're saying, preparing to do what they're going to do, I think to myself, what a bunch of hypocritical bastards, no?
Yeah, well, and they've always done this. I mean, remember Jim Wright, the Speaker of the House, right? 1980s, meeting with Daniel Ortega over the Contras. And, of course, when the Democrats do this, you know, they're heroes. They're freedom fighters. Mm-hmm. You know, they're doing the Lord's work. You know, they're saving the country. But as soon as anybody on the Republican side even talks to somebody overseas for whatever purpose, I mean, they start yelling and screaming collusion. But in the case of Kennedy, I mean, this was the highest level, the head of the KGB to the head of the Soviet Union, confidential memo.
And they love Kennedy right to the bitter end, and they still love him, and they still treat him like a conquering hero, when in fact what he did was treasonous, absolutely treasonous. Professor Paul Kengor, American Spectator, I want to thank you, my brother. God bless you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Same to you. Thanks for all you.
Take care of yourself. Now what do you have to say, liberal Democrats? I'll be right back. You're listening to the best of the Mark Levin Show. Happy New Year. All right, let me update you on this shooting. The Associated Press. Teacher and a teenage student killed in a shooting at a private Christian school in Wisconsin. AP Madison, a teenage student, opened fire with a handgun at a private Christian school in Wisconsin, killing a teacher and another teenager during the final week before Christmas break. The shooter also died. The shooter also wounded others at Abundant Life Christian School, including 2 students who were in critical condition and 4 with less serious injuries. I'm feeling a little dismayed now, so close to Christmas, Barnes said. He's the chief of police. The shooter was a 17-year-old female student. A law enforcement official told the Associated Press the official was not authorized to discuss the ongoing investigation and spoke to the AP on the condition of anonymity. Police said the shooter was dead by apparent suicide when officers arrived. Chief Barnes declined to give details about the shooter, partly out of respect for the family. With a few rare exceptions, a 17-year-old can't legally possess a gun in Wisconsin. So that's an important point, isn't it? In other words, there's absolute gun control for a 17-year-old. Abundant Life is a non-denominational Christian school, kindergarten through high school, with approximately 390 students in Madison, the state capital. Children and families were reunited at a medical building about a mile away. Let's see here. Someone from the school called 911 to report an active shooter shortly before 11 a.m. It was 10:57. First responders who were in training just 3 miles away dashed to the school for an actual emergency. Investigators believe the shooter used a 9mm pistol. Well, they would know for sure now because she committed suicide, so the pistol's there. A law enforcement official told AP the official spoke on the condition of anonymity again because they were not authorized to discuss the investigation. I'm not aware that the school had metal detectors, nor should schools have metal detectors. It's a safe space, says Barnes. Well, not safe enough, and this is part of the problem. A safe place, a safe space. So all safe spaces shouldn't have metal detectors? Is that it? I wonder if the police precinct has metal detectors. Just curious. Police blocked off roads around the school. Federal agents were on the scene to assist local law enforcement. No shots were fired by police. And it goes on. Shootings have set off a fervent debate about gun control, and it goes on. Well, she was 17, and in Wisconsin, she wasn't allowed to own a gun. So I don't know what gun control they're arguing. I don't know who she got it from, whether it was a parent, who the hell knows? But we're going to debate gun control, and they won't even put metal detectors in schools. I mean, that is just so absurd. So absurd, in my humble opinion. You see this ABC News? George Stephanopoulos, they settled a lawsuit with Trump for $15 or $16 million because they accused him of being convicted of rape, which he was not convicted of rape. And I've said this over and over again. In fact, that's what they charged him with, but that's not what he was convicted of by a jury. And Simone Sanders, who, as I recall, was an advisor to Joe Biden, or maybe it was Kamala Harris, but I do remember that she was a very, very disgruntled individual. She was at a senior level, and they basically kicked her ass out. But there she is, MSLSD, which is where reprobates go. She had this to say, cut 10, go.
The press is in a difficult position. Everyone understands that. That doesn't change the obligation to be straightforward and objective when it comes to Donald Trump.
I would just say, this feels like it has a real chilling effect. Shout out to the standards department. Okay, standards is always making sure that we are keeping the bar high and substantive and accurate. But what George Stephanopoulos said in that interview, it seems to hold up with what the judge said after the fact. And now his news organization and himself, George Stephanopoulos himself, is paying $1 million of his own money to the lawyers, and ABC at $15 million. It's insane.
No, it's not insane. You throw the word rape around, you better know what the hell you're talking about. He was not convicted of rape, which was what the civil complaint headline basically was. Remember the story where she bumped into, I think it was George Conway or one of these reprobates who was advising her on how to go forward, and then some dark money billionaire Democrat helped finance her lawsuit against Trump. It's so sleazy. It's so damnable. And people need to be held to account. And you win some and you lose some in these lawsuits. And from a business perspective, actually, ABC did the right thing. Now, it's these other networks are saying, what's the big deal? You shouldn't have done that. You've heard us. Because they don't believe in the truth. It's a very high bar for a public official. But when you accuse them of rape and they're not guilty of rape and they didn't rape anybody, that's kind of black and white. And so this is a victory. This is a victory for the truth. Nicole Hannah Jones, remember her 1619 Project? She is a Marxist. She is really a radical. She's way, way out there. I've spent way too much of my life on this broadcast talking about her and explaining her to the American people and what she wrote and the responses to what she wrote. She's very upset with this too, you see. But it's all about her. It turns out it's all about her. No surprise there. Cut 11, go.
We are facing an epic battle in the next 4 years with an administration that we know, as you just laid out, has a history of attacking journalists.
Now, hold on. Barack Obama attacked journalists like nobody before. And nobody since. How come you lie about that? How come you don't mention that? Why is that? Nicole, may I call you Nicole? Why is that? Now, she's a multimillionaire spewing this crap, selling this crap, CRT and all the rest of it. 1619. You've had award-winning historians that have ripped her writings apart, said they're not historical. They're barely readable. But nonetheless, she's made a fortune out of this. And the fact of the matter is, he has a history of attacking journalists. Barack Obama had a history of prosecuting journalists. I write about it in On Freedom of the Press. That was my, I think, 2021 project, wasn't it, Mr. Producer? Something like that. Go ahead.
Journalists, of suing journalists, of surveilling journalists, and also...
He wasn't surveilling journalists. Obama was surveilling journalists. Biden was surveilling journalists. Look what they did to social media. We know from Twitter what they were doing. Trump didn't do that. What are you talking about? But it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Against the work of journalists, which is what Trump tried to do with the 1619 Project. So we as a press...
Hold on. Trump tried to do with the 1619 Project, legislate against the work of journalists? What the hell is she talking about? Seriously. I have no idea. Go ahead.
It's a time where the Committee to Protect Journalists...
Shut up, you idiot. Rambling buffoon. Fake fraud, phony. Just shut up. Sick of you. I don't even know why I played that. Why did I play that, Mr. Producer? Must have been a light moment. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
This is Mark Levin wishing you a happy new year. Now back to the best of me. Yes, this George Stephanopoulos, this lawsuit and so forth. It's just so... It's so worrisome. What will it do to the free press? What free press? The hell are they talking about? I'm quite serious. What are they talking? What free press are they talking about? We don't have a free press. We have a press that's free to do as it wishes. But that's not what's meant by a free press. A free press is supposed to be an entity where the individuals who are involved in reporting to you and me are serious about gathering the facts, gathering information, and providing them without a political agenda or ideological agenda. Now, obviously, they won't be perfect. Everybody has a particular viewpoint. But you're supposed to try. They don't even try. You know, they write these screeds to each other. I've read some of them to you. I have some of them in my book on freedom of the press, as well as other books, where they say it's our duty, our responsibility as a press to cover Donald Trump differently. Oh, really? They always cover Donald Trump differently. Matter of fact, they always cover Republicans differently. But Donald Trump, they've done the worst of the worst, the way they've treated him. But this isn't a battle where they're defending a free press and challenging a free press. We're challenging the American Pravda. We're challenging the American Al Jazeera. That's what we're doing. If you accuse somebody of being found guilty of rape and he hasn't been, well, that's to be punished. Oh, they're going to punish the media. It's a funny thing, America. When this nation was founded, we had these libel laws. States had libel laws. And early on, when we didn't have a central government, those libel laws were used all the time, and they were used by so-called public figures. There was no distinction between a public figure and a non-public figure. That was concocted by the U.S. Supreme Court in the New York Times case, New York Times v. Sullivan. They manufactured that whole thing in order to ensure a free press, but it hasn't ensured a free press. It ensured an utterly irresponsible partisan press that tries to influence our elections, that tries to brainwash us with propaganda. That's not a free press. So those punishments that the states had and so forth, many of them were destroyed. So you have a very high bar when you're a public official. Very high bar. But there's no bar high enough when you accuse somebody of being convicted of rape and they haven't been. There's no standard that'll let you get away with that last time I checked. And so ABC News had to pay $15 million. George Stephanopoulos had to pay $1 million in legal fees or something. Nothing to him. He makes like $25 million a year, whatever he makes. Can you believe that, by the way? Can you believe that? A Clintonoid headed the war room against women. This is the nature of the incestuous relationship between the press and the Democrat Party and the radical left. But then what's meant by a free press? So back then when the years went on and we got a Constitution and then we got a Bill of Rights and in the First Amendment, the free press, freedom of speech, that's when you could bring actual lawsuits against, well, they didn't have media companies back then, but against a publisher of a pamphlet, a publisher of a newspaper. They didn't really have bylines back then either. So if you're going to sue, you had to sue the whole entity, which wasn't that big to begin with. But that's what was done. It was done a lot. But then, of course, we got the court in the 60s, which was obviously the most brilliant court that courts have ever seen before. And that's when we get this New York Times Sullivan case. But it's done enormous damage to our country. Look, I want a free press. But you cannot have these buffoons who are Democrats, radicals, leftists, jihadists, Marxists, dressed up as journalists just by saying they're journalists and they work for some massive corporation that just happens to have a so-called media or news platform. Look at us. This is a free press. It's not a free press. It's a propaganda operation. Again, just like Pravda, just like Al Jazeera. Look what they did to Twitter. If it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't have known what was going on there. Like how they were in bed with the Democrats. Look at Zuckerturd and look what he did in the 2020 election. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine. Go get them. The men and women in Israel. Go get them. The men and women in the United States. You got them. We won. I'll see you tomorrow.